Welcome, friends and allies, to the Exploring More podcast. Michael Thompson hanging out with SJ, and I think you introduced her as the fabulous Sherry, and
Correct.
the wonderful Robin. And we are doing a Zoom edition. This is part 2 of a series on the Rendezvous project, and highlighting marriage and exploring marriage with one of our favorite marriages, the Jennings. And so we covered a lot of ground in the first episode, and in this episode, I think we're going to turn just a little bit more to what makes the Rendezvous project unique, why we did it, why it's important, and things like that, if that's all right. So yeah, everybody good?
Let's go.
All right, let's roll. So I go back to creating it, which actually had several parts, right? We did a normal rendezvous project, like we had done a weekend with several couples, and I think we had maybe 22 or 3 couples.
Yeah, it was the largest one we had ever done, for sure, because the facility allowed us to do that. So we just filled it up. So
even creating a project, like we said in the last episode, I mean, there were lots of rehearsals, there was lots of practices, there were lots of years that we did this. So the Rendezvous project itself had its own evolution, right? And so when it came time for it, we realized it was there were more and more couples wanting to get in it. We didn't want to go hotel and into some big, because part of the Rendezvous project's integrity is in its
Intimate
small, intimate space, and nothing wrong with big conferences, nothing. I mean, they're wonderful, but that was what we felt like was important. So how do we scale this? How do we offer this in a way that couples could do this with just a small group of other couples? They could host their own retreat. They could do it weekly, or they might just could do it, and go through it privately.
Right. I think, Michael, to your point about, us not wanting to move into a hotel and become a big ballroom type marriage conference, what we are all about knowing and being known. Robin brought that up at the beginning, that maybe was our motivation when we first were dating and then getting married, was really our heart's desire. We wouldn't necessarily know to say it this way at the time, but it was to be known and to know another person intimately. And so in the context of the type of resource that the Rendezvous Project is, if you look at a hotel ballroom type event, you can go and attend one of those events and never speak to another person other than your spouse the whole time, and which is okay. And we went to, I don't even remember how many of them we went to like that, the weekend to remember with family life, and it was absolutely great for us to communicate that way. With the Rendezvous Project, what we're trying to do is to provide that atmosphere where couples can talk to each other, husband and wife, but also encourage them to talk to others within the context of a community.
Right. And
one of the resources that we've produced is a list of the redemptive tenets of redemptive marriage. And so there's a combination there, rather than an either or. Where with a larger event, ballroom event, it might be you only have to talk to your spouse, and then in some other events where you're expected to kind of get up and present yourself or speak about your relationship. Yeah. This is kind of a combination of the two.
Yeah, I really, well said. Yeah, and I believe very much in this climate that we actually may have the opportunity to facilitate couples coming together. We have couples like Joseph and Lori Mize who they would host something virtual, they would do that yesterday. if the opportunity presented itself. So I think couples are going to have so many options in the Rendezvous project to step in, maybe go through it privately, but then sign up for an online group or a virtual group hosted by one of our guide teams. So I know we're getting ahead of ourselves, but this when I think about some of the my favorite parts of creating it, I have to go back to, I love the evolution of it.
Mhm.
I love that it's been, painted and sanded and painted and sanded and painted again, in many ways. But these sessions have emerged over almost a decade, a little more than a decade of tweaking the recipe, if you will, and bringing forward what we thought. I loved that the filming itself, what I would want our friends and allies to know is those were 50-minute sessions, 55-minute sessions of teaching and sharing. So the Rendezvous project is kind of in itself, the video series is the greatest hits of that session.
Yeah, we whittled it down to about 30 to 35 minutes per session is what we ended up with. Yeah.
So that just to make it a little more, focused and the good stuff. Yeah, that and man, that was hard to do. Hard to cut some of those elements of different sessions. But I think the last thing I would say was one of my favorite parts was, so after the filming of the sessions themselves of the conference, then we got to get away and bring the bookends, right? The introduction and now it's your turn. All of the elements that make it, the interviews. I mean, we got to go away as couples, the guide team and a few other friends, and we got to film some more. Mm-hmm. And I love that. That was a 5-day, thank you to the Boone Mansion that we got to do it in. But that's one of my
stoners, yeah.
That's one of my favorite parts of the creating of the Rendezvous project, of doing what we're actually offering. We got to do something together. We got to go on mission together. Our friendships grew and deepened because we got to do that together, SJ. All the elements that we're hopeful for in redemptive community and redemptive marriages, we actually got to do in creating the Rendezvous project. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I love that. That's some of my favorite stuff about it.
And that is what I loved about the whole project. I agree with you. Both parts were so special. What we offered originally in the context of the Rendezvous weekend, and then the filming together and filling it out a little bit more, and a little bit more intimate filming. But what I love about it so much is that the 4 couples that offer, the Jennings along with us, and then the Burnett's and the Andretians, these are dear friends that we all have walked together for a lot of years and do life with as much as we're able in the midst of life, and long to do more. And I think of when we're together, it's different. You know how you see someone in passing, and maybe a friend, maybe a coworker, and you say, "Hey, how are you doing?" "I'm well, how are you?" It's just we don't say that to each other ever unless we really are well. We do life together and interact in a way that's authentic, and we long to be more so. And we share stories of the struggles that we're experiencing in our marriages, with our kids, and get to hold space for each other and get to talk about those things, and we pray together for each other. And so to be able to offer this collectively, the 4 couples, that was my favorite part. Sitting there, watching my best friends did something to me. It was so phenomenal. I was so proud of my friends. And I was so thrilled to be able to be a part of something this brilliant. And my favorite thing were the stories. The stories that you both told, Scott and Sherry, the stories that David and Rebecca and Jeff and Dana, real, honest, vulnerable stories of the struggle, how God's meeting them, and what it looks like in the context of their marriage. It's so often you wonder, what does this really look like? This principle that they're teaching. So many real, authentic, honest stories throughout that just make it so brilliant. Mm-hmm. So I'm more excited about this resource than anything else OA has ever done. I think largely for that and what it can mean for other couples. So yeah, it was a blast to do.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I was just with a guy that was there during that weekend that we filmed.
Oh, yeah.
And it was his first Rendezvous weekend and with his wife. And he was reiterating to me again, to your point, Robin, how much he and his wife just loved the intentional small group time together. So, that they didn't know the couples in their small group at all at the beginning of the weekend. But like you said, we know each other on the guide team for years and years. Well, he said by the end of the weekend, it was like they had known each other for years. Mm-hmm. And I think there's such a hunger and such a thirst for people, again, to know and be known as individuals and as couples. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Favorite parts of the okay. Can't hide on video. That's fun. when it's just audio, we've got signals that like I'm good. No, so.
What's the question?
Yeah. And I think that's part of. So just closing out that favorite parts of the journey of making it. I want to talk about some of the favorite ingredients of it. Mm-hmm. I want us to offer a little bit of insight and encouragement that way, because for me, and we've touched on it, but I want to go into this segment before we take a break in a little bit, is that I love the attention to story. I love that there's a session on, yes, why are we here? What's this about? But there's a session on the heart of a woman, and there's a session on a separate session on the heart of a man. And after those sessions, the pre-work, right? The homework for a man is, and it's in the project guide, to write out his story. What happened to you? And there's a tool and resource to help him organize that story. So like you said, Sherry, earlier, to hear SJ share his story for an hour. I mean, even I just said that. There's some people listening going, holy mackerel.
An hour? Yeah. Yeah.
Come on, dude.
What have we seen happen time and time again, Michael?
You 40 years, you can't get 40 years in an hour. You can't get 50 years in an hour. So we provided some tools and resources to help you. We're not just giving you a blank sheet of what's your story, write your story, but we really bring some invitation to consider, to sit with God and write that story. And then we know what happens when you tell your story, more comes up. And I like how you said it, Sherry, earlier, that it was uninterrupted. I got to hear him talk about his story for an hour. And there's some great things that we hear, and there's some hard things that we hear, and there's things that the Spirit brings up even in the moment. I've heard it over and over and over again as we want to do a lot of story work with people. I just heard it this weekend with some guys. I hadn't thought about that story in years. And they were impactful stories. Mm-hmm. They were eventful stories. And that's what part of this resource is about. And I think that maybe the most significant part is you were talking about the couples. We have story together. We have journey together. We have history, this story together. And I think that's just a huge part of what I'm looking forward to, couples discovering more about one another's story as they explore more in each other's stories.
Yeah.
I think with the sessions, Michael, and I think about the project itself and its content. The first 3 sessions, their titles are questions. Why are we here? What are we up against? And what is intimacy? I mean, because I think as you're coming into a marriage resource like this, you got questions, right? And I think we've tried to address in the content, that idea that I'm coming into this thing, I don't know what to expect, I don't know what we're going to talk about, I don't know what I need to talk about, so I need that guidance. And then we get into the story part of it. It's great.
Yeah. I think when you get to prepare your story and then share your story, I think that's another part of what our friend, what you were talking about, what he and his wife got to know these other couples, is because they started to share some of their findings. They started to share some of their work, that was just time alone with God as a couple, but then they brought some of that into a larger circle. And I find that to be a little scary, and yet the benefit is pretty glorious at times. When I think about story, you guys, the one place, and I actually went there this morning online. I went to Harry Met Sally. I went to the film When Harry Met Sally, and the old couples that it breaks to. Yeah, I rode up to the ninth floor with her just to be with her.
Yeah. We lived in the same building and we never met.
Never met. Precious. I loved it, right? And those couples actually are kind of dropped in through the series of the film. And then I found this thing on YouTube from Rob Reiner, who talked about the genesis of When Harry Met Sally. He said he was at his friend's house and his friend's parents were there. And they were older, he was in his late 30s, and so his friend's parents were there in their late 60s. And the guy is just sitting over there. And this is in Manhattan or New York somewhere, I think he's describing. And the older guy just sitting over there. And Rob says, Mr. So how did you guys meet? How did tell? And he said he came alive. He hadn't said a word all dinner. And he came alive, and he said that was the genesis for the film When Harry Met Sally. And he knew that when he made it, he wanted to bring these stories. Couples and stories, because Harry Met Sally is a couple's story.
Yeah.
And yet to bring these other stories of real life people. So it's just I think part of the goodness of the Rendezvous Project is a commitment, an emphasis, and an invitation to story.
One of my favorite stories from the Rendezvous weekend, Michael, again, from that weekend where we filmed, was an older couple that was there. It might have even been a weekend before. It was actually a weekend before that, yeah. Older couple that was there, and the husband wasn't really sure what he was doing there. And on Thursday.
I remember.
But by Sunday, with tears in his eyes, he was sharing that, man, I learned things about my wife that I never knew after 40 plus years of marriage. Yeah. Story is so important.
Right. He said, I remember, I know who the couple is. We know who they are. And he said, well, looks like we've been married the longest, been here, married 40 years.
Right.
And he said, I really not sure there's much more to know.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
About her.
Yeah, about her and
her. Yeah.
And so I remember sitting there in the Spirit, going, kind of the Holy Spirit is elbowing me like, watch this. Watch it.
Yeah.
So I knew I couldn't wait until Sunday, because I was so hopeful that what we had put together would take him on a journey of discovery. And they were like one of the couples in Harry Met Sally. When he said that, I don't know if you noticed, when he said that Thursday night, she was very stoic. She
Mhm.
was very, I won't say hurt, but what she looked like Sunday when he began to share his discoveries and he got teary, she was beaming.
Yeah, she was seen, she was known,
Perceived.
what we all want. And yeah.
Yeah. I think of how important it is. I wouldn't have known in the first rendezvous weekends that we offered how important those spaces are for us to be, and we invite people into this, other couples into this space of being, like Sherry said, just quiet and just listening. And I think of two words. I think of openness and curiosity. If we can have a posture of being just open and listening and being curious about our partner's story and what happened to them, and even taking notes. I'm a note taker, but things that I want to go back to explore with Michael and ask him, can you tell me more about that?
Yeah.
I would add to that, Robin, too, open, curious, and hopeful. Back to your point from the last session, the last episode that we talked about, bringing some hope that there's more to learn, there's more to discover, there's more to unearth about each other and ourselves.
Yeah, and before we pivot away from this, because I know at some point, we could do a series on telling stories and hearing our stories.
We probably should. Yeah.
I love the prompt. I love the tool that we offer to explore our story, because I feel like, so often we're invited to remember, and it feels like our story is never the same. That the more we go back into it, and the more we go back into it with Jesus and these different prompts, and we have the opportunity to see the different themes, to see the different dots, the different things, the different times in our lives, and pulling them together. Every time we tell our story, it's different. There's a little bit different because we're different. We've moved in a different place. We've gotten more healing. We're exploring something. God is showing us something. So I look forward to the next time when we sit down and share. I get to hear his story again and what he's seeing now, what God is showing him from his childhood, from his adolescence.
Yeah.
Because it's always different.
Yeah. Again, we've known each other for more than 30 years. And it was just a couple weekends ago, you shared a story with me I had never heard before about your childhood, because we continue the exploration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when we come back, we're gonna take a break. When we come back, I want to turn into some of the ingredients of some more of these ingredients of the Rendezvous Project. What makes it different, maybe from some others? I'm not sure better is what I want to put on the table, but different. And yeah, share some of our stories about the journey of creating the Rendezvous Project. So we'll be right back on the Exploring More podcast with more on the Rendezvous Project. Welcome back to the Exploring More podcast, hanging out with SJ and Sherry and Robin, talking about the Rendezvous Project. And before the break, I mentioned it, and so let's go to this place of. I like what you said earlier, Robin, about who's in it. These are just our friends and people we're doing life with, and a lot of couples, like you said, SJ, who were hopeful, curious, open, but I love that a couple would take the time to work on their marriage. I think it's one of the most worked on, underexplored, we change the oil in our car every 3,000 miles. I don't think we do that in our marriage.
No.
We wouldn't have had not it been for the invitation, the opportunity, resources, environments to step into, books to read together. So I really, these are reasons and parts of a bigger why we wanted to create a resource that maybe could meet some a niche. There was one couple who gave us some feedback, and they said, "Wow, this is this is some deeper water. This is good. And they said, I'm not sure, something about, I'm not sure we could have handled this in a premarital lane, but I wish somebody would have took us there.
Yep. Yep. I'm a firm believer, Michael, of kindly chucking people into the deep end. And those of you that know me are not surprised by that. I know.
Yeah.
But really, I think to that point, maybe for a premarital context, it would be for that couple. It's a little overwhelming, but they wanted some anyway. This might be feel a little overwhelming for a couple that's been married 40 years. I mean, but I think what's overwhelming has maybe some to do with the content. But to your point about, maintaining our vehicles and the attention we give our marriage relationship, I think that's what's more overwhelming, especially for a couple that has been married a long time and has not paid much attention to the maintenance and upkeep, to put a real bland kind of a descriptor on it. But they haven't paid much attention to that. It can be a little scary to think about going into some of this deeper water. But I think what we're trying to do with this resource, and maybe it's not a better resource, but I think we can say we would describe it as a better way to walk, is to promote intentionality about your relationship, not just when things are going wrong. Right? Let's not address our marriage when it's on fire, upside down in the ditch. Although if your marriage is on fire, upside down in the ditch, you need to address it right away, right? But let's try to maybe give it some attention and give us some awareness and some tools and understanding, so that we don't end up upside down on fire in the ditch. And changing the culture and the mindset of how people approach their marriage and how they approach the growth and the intentionality of getting closer to the one that you married for a lifetime.
I think you're right. This is and this is attributed to so many people, right? That, I'm busy, you're busy. Well, that means your marriage is busy. The Rendezvous Project is an invitation to find a slower speed limit, to move at a different speed, and reflect and have a conversation. But I get it with kids and work and just the day to day. It's just like we just drive our car, we just drive it, and we really don't worry about maintenance until we're broken down. Somewhere, somehow, which is not healthy. Robin and Sherry, what about you guys? What makes the resource on marriage different? Or go ahead.
Can I say something before we move on?
I felt that deep breath.
I've done it a couple times.
Okay.
To what SJ was saying that I appreciated, about that this can be scary and this can feel daunting, and it does for me every time I do it and even offer it. I feel the weight of it. And to encourage our listeners, if this might be something that you're considering doing, the word that keeps coming up to me is honor. If this is something that you and your partner, your spouse, are considering doing together, could it be a space where you even set out together and say, I want to honor where I am in this space, and what might be stirred up and what might come up that feels terrifying, that feels scary, that feels disruptive, and maybe I might need to take a pause. And maybe I might not be ready to explore that yet, but can that be okay? And to have compassion and kindness to say, Lovey, I'm not ready to go there yet. And can I honor my spouse and where he is and where he might not want to go? And can we have that even as we're considering stepping into this place? Can we be willing to honor each other and where this because it can feel really scary. It can feel very exposed. I can be very myself. I can feel fear about what might be exposed in me.
Mm-hmm.
And can I say, and that's the point. What is that?
Right.
Where
To
did
be
that come
curious
from?
about, right.
What,
And I don't,
what, I mean, so, instead of getting through the Rendezvous project from 1 to 12 and filling in all the blanks, I think part of this, what makes it different is that's not the goal. That's not the objective, is to get through the resource. The objective is to explore it together. And what is that? And it can be volatile. It can be fragile to have. We're not saying here's 12 sessions for a better marriage. I hope that's the fruit of it. We're saying here's 12 sessions for an exploration of your marriage.
Yep. And what we say all the time, Michael, and listeners, you've heard us say this on the podcast, I don't know how many times. Our goal at Zoe is not ministry. Ministry is the fruit of our intimacy with God and each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say, in the context of the Rendezvous Project, a better marriage is not the goal, right? A better marriage is the result of your intimacy with God and with each other.
That's good. Yeah.
If you pursue intimacy with God and you pursue intimacy with each other, you will have a better marriage.
Right.
And the point of the Rendezvous Project is to kind of take you on that journey of how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And to make it duplicatable, that you could share it with others, but that also, again, back to changing the culture of marriage resources, if we can be so bold to say that's what we're trying to do. It's not just let's get through these 10 sessions, to your point, Michael, and move on to the next thing that we've got to go through. This is honestly what we're trying to do, is introduce people to a way of living
together
in the kingdom together.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. That's a good, I think something is very true about that. When I think about the difference or the hope, why did we make it? And what maybe makes it different is it's some ingredients that we believe can foster that walking in the kingdom together. Sherry, what about you? The ingredients, what
Landing on you.
What makes it special, or what makes it different? Why are you excited about it? What parts of this?
Well, my favorite part of our weekends, and so my favorite part of the Rendezvous Project, is the invitation to take questions to God. For me to take my questions to God, for Scott to take his questions to God, and to listen to what he will share, what he will say, what he will invite me into, what he's awakening in me. The invitation to see those, because so often in marriage and life, we take our questions to each other, and that's good and beautiful and helpful, but so much more good and beautiful and helpful is, I can say, Scott, how do you see me? Or I can say, Jesus, how do you see me? I can ask Scott how he sees this situation or what I'm experiencing, or I can say, Jesus, show me more about why I'm so angry at Scott, or, why he's so angry at me, or why I even perceive the way he's moving as anger. And I don't know of any other time in my life I've been invited to take my questions to God.
Yeah.
So that is my hands down favorite part.
Yeah. Well, me too. and I even think of my own story and how even in my unhealth, in my codependency, because of my family of origin and how we were raised and the effect that had on me, and my tendency towards needing everyone to be okay with me, desperately needing people to be okay with me? So if I am always taking that is what I do. That's my default. That's my false self. That's me living and operating out of a broken place. Taking that question, are we okay? Are we good? Are we good? To you, well, Michael can learn early on, I need to tell her we're good so we can live at peace. But then I'm not addressing what is broken there. Why do I do that? Why do I so desperately need to have him be okay with me, and my children to be okay with me, and my friends to be? What is so disruptive about it not being okay? It feels like death to me. And why? So as I take those questions to God, he's more able to reveal and stir and invite and disrupt and take me into places of exploration, into my story that invites me into going to those places for healing and restoration, so that I'm able.
That's good.
I love that you said that, because it makes me realize, or reminds me, that I didn't ask questions. I just made statements and assumptions about everything. So I didn't have to ask if he was good. I just assumed he was good with something. Do you know what I mean? So even the invitation to ask the question, because I wasn't asking from the wrong source before, I just wasn't asking.
Well, that takes more time. When the discussion turns argument, and then the argument turns into who's more right.
Me.
You've lost, right?
You're not going to win, and I'm going to predict you probably don't win many of those, Jerry.
but that's the way, that's the way so many of us were either. I wouldn't say taught, but either that's just so
programmed.
That's just so present in the programming of us, and versus why do you feel the way you feel? Why do you think the way you think? What is it that you believe? What teaching and inviting couples to see what is going on in a deeper space in me needs to start with me and in my spouse. And so I'm walking with God even in that, like, Jesus, what is this? I could have named it as codependency, but what is this? And is this something that needs to be allowed? Is this something that needs to be talked about? And back to, potential counseling and other conversations with other people. I hope that the Rendezvous Project is the beginning for a lot of that, of deeper exploration. But, I've been in marriage environments where it's conflict resolution. Right. Well, what the hell's the conflict about?
Right. Can we resolve the root issue, please? Yeah.
Before we resolve it, and I don't mean to minimize it. I'm just saying it's that. What is it? Is it a false self? Is it a wounding? It's wounding when you look at me that way or talk to me that way. It's how my dad looked at me all my life. Okay, whoa. Yeah. Now you've bumped into something. Yeah. But it's not going away until maybe you and your loved one, right, can bring it to the one that loves you and says, look what we found. What is this? I mean, you think about the bite of that apple. You think about the bite of that apple and Adam and Eve saying, Father, what is this? What did we do? No, they were ashamed, and so they hid. And there's parts of us that are hidden, and we've got an elaborate fig leaf. I was going to say wardrobe, right? Of things, construct that there's certain things that are even hidden to us. And so if intimacy is knowing and being known, SJ, then what does it look like to pursue that with the person that I promised I would, and invited her into that, right? We say this at the Rendezvous Project, that she's in your life. God has her in your life to teach you how to love and be loved. And that be loved part, that beloved sons, beloved daughters, what does all that look like? So when I look at the Rendezvous Project and what we try to offer, it's in that space. That I think that makes it different. And lastly, I would say, and as I look at, I actually have up on our screen some of the sessions. And I love that we take people to the session number 10, the glory of your life and the glory of your lives together, the glory.
Mm-hmm.
And to bring the passion verb exercise, to bring these qualities that are Robin in the kingdom and the qualities of me in the kingdom, and to bring those together. Who are we together in this battle, in this war for the heart, right? We say this and believe this wholeheartedly, that the context of our story, if you don't understand the context of your story, the larger story that your story's in as a couple, you will not survive this.
Yeah.
That we live in the greatest love story set in the midst of the fiercest battle. Listeners, if you don't remember anything, if that's my best commercial for the Rendezvous Project, and that strikes some curiosity, some hope, and some, whoa, maybe that's part of the reason why, we're living less, or we're not experiencing a fullness or an abundance, then you'll want to sign on for this exploration. But the glory of our lives together, if we can get things out of the way of being loved by God, and we can do that with and for one another, right? The conditional love, that we can trade that in for unconditional love, and bring being loved to one another. You have just increased your odds 50%.
Yeah, that brings you, what you did, Michael, you talked about the glory of your life. That's session 10. But in order to get there, you have to go through sessions 8 and 9. And we're so sold on the healing that is needed that we dedicated 2 sessions to it. And Robin, you started off this part of our conversation with the need for healing and going back into your story and exploring some of those things. And then what we've talked about really here is training. In those sessions, we talk about healing and training. And the training is what you referred to earlier, Michael. Jesus, what is this about?
Yeah.
Tell me where this comes from. Show me, reveal to me why this is true about me right now, because it doesn't feel like it's coming from you. And that you have to be trained to think that way and to operate that way. So there's healing and training that comes with it. And I love that about the Rendezvous Project. I think too, and maybe we should land the plane with this about, the things that's coming to us, all 4 of us, about what makes it different. And for me, I think it's this idea that we're not just trying to cure the symptoms of the problem. We're trying to cure the problem. And I think there's a lot of marriage resources that go after, to your point, Michael, you talked about conflict resolution, right? And yeah, you have to resolve conflict, but resolving conflict doesn't just mean bringing or making peace.
Yeah, or understanding the problem better.
Right. It means going back into why it creates a conflict in your heart in the first place.
Right.
Yeah.
And rather than just staying on the surface and saying, okay, how can we just come to a place where we're not fighting so that we can move on with our lives? No, we want to find out why you got into the fight in the first place and unearth all of that gold, because that's really what it is. Even though it can be painful, it's gold.
Yeah.
And help us because we need this. Like you, Michael, we say all the time, we're still customers to grow deeper in intimacy with God and each other. But I think that's what the project does, is it invites people to go back into their own story, to their own journey, and unearth some of the whys that these things happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last thoughts, ladies, go ahead.
What he said.
We married brilliant men.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Wow.
Well, it shows how far we had to come to get to that level, to be even accused of being brilliant. So
Well, I will say one thing, actually, what he said, and I just can't shake it when you were talking earlier about the context of our story and the larger story that our story is in. And marriages are opposed. And we've talked about that. I remember every single Rendezvous weekend.
Yeah.
From the very first one we offered every single one I got taken out. I'm offering and sharing minimally because I had young children at home, but evil knew how to take me out. And the way to take me out is through my daughters, our daughters. And every single year we offered this. Something happened on the home front that literally took me out. And I don't think I could see it at the time. Maybe we had some context for it.
Yeah.
But especially looking back, it's so clear, crystal clear to me and to us now that those weekends are so powerful and so important. They are opposed.
Yeah.
Life and healing and restoration and redemption individually as well as together. Are you kidding? That we talk about, is there a force greater on the planet than two people walking with God together?
Right.
And if evil can take me out, it's very easy to take both of us out.
Yeah. It's a three-legged race, right? When one hits it, the other's coming, or you break the rope, or you cut the rope, or you cut the band that tied, and that's a different matter altogether. But I love that. I think it's part of what Robin makes it different, and to talk about it, to put it in a session, in a series, where you could say, even though we have a warfare session, every session has warfare in it. Every session talks about it. And how does that look? We've never been here before. Married 30 years, 31 this year, 2021. We've never been here before. So there is more to explore. Yes, in our history, and yes, in our story, but it's being written. Mm-hmm. It's being crafted. And so what God meant when he meant marriage, he meant that it was two people, a man and a woman, a husband and wife, walking with him together. So if that's what he intended, then we know from the beginning that is a force to be reckoned with, and it's a force to come against because of the extensive damage that the kingdom of darkness can get when two people cut the rope, cut the cord, and end the casualty rate, the casualty effect just dominoes when marriages are assaulted and are in some way captured by the enemy. So this work of seeing how that works, why we're here, what we're up against, what's intimacy, those first three questions, the heart of a woman, what did God mean? What's core to a woman that and unique to them as they bear God's image? To a man, another session, what's core to a man's heart as he bears God's image? And then we spend a whole session on the true self, false self. We dive into the Enneagram a little bit. So those who like that, Scott and Sherry did a great job with that. And then all of that collection, right, SJ, like you said, we come into healing. Healing 1, healing 2. Why healing? What is healing? How do you get healing? And it's so customized, it's so personalized that we're trying to provide the environment for then God, like you said, Sherry, to meet with you individually, to meet with you as a couple. And what if those things could get out of the way? The false self could be diminished. The wounding that we've all taken, that we brought down the aisle with us, what if that could be cared for by God? What if that could be given attention and healing take place? Well, now I'm coming into my new man, and she's coming into her new woman. What's that to walk together? And we got to say this, that there's a session on parenting, which is a whole other conference, but what does it look like? Because as marriages, this is a huge part of our lives and journey. And I just wanted to highlight that
redemptive parenting. Yeah.
But you cannot do redemptive parenting in session 2.
No.
Because you bring all of this to your parenting and therefore to your kids. So those are the ingredients. And could you just describe how to go
You
ahead.
bring all of it to your marriage,
To your marriage.
and then to your
And then to your kids. Yeah.
Yeah.
So could you
Yeah.
describe how, real quick, SJ, how people can get on board, get connected, where they can go? And then I have one last quote.
Well, I can, but I want to make an opportunity for Sherry if you had any last thoughts before we move into that, or did you do that already?
I'm just realizing again, as we're talking about it, as you're talking about what opposes marriage, as just how valuable marriage is, how invaluable, how strong, how important, how significant the marriage relationship is, that it is so fiercely opposed because of how beautiful it can be. Yeah, it's hard work, and it can cause you the greatest pain in your life, but it brings beauty and goodness and intimacy and beyond words.
Yeah.
Beyond words.
Well
It
said.
can. That's the invitation. It can.
Yeah.
It doesn't just happen.
Exactly.
Yep. Yeah.
It's hard fought and worth it, right?
So how do people get this goodness in them, SJ?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Visit the rendezvousproject.com for all the information about the Rendezvous Project and opportunity to purchase the pre-order there. And actually, when this episode's airs, we should actually be open and ready to for you to purchase it by the time this episode airs. But if not, go ahead and secure a pre-order of the content and the project guides to go along with it. Again, listeners, we want to give you an encouragement to leave us a rate and a review on the podcast platform of your choice. It just helps us to be found, helps this content to be found out there in the kingdom. Yeah,
that's great. Yeah, thanks. I want to end with a quote from The Art of War by
Sun Tzu.
Yes.
All right, that's great, man.
Yeah. Being deeply loved by someone gives you strength, while loving someone deeply gives you courage.
Yeah.
Being deeply loved by someone gives you strength, while loving someone deeply gives you courage.
I like it.
Me too. Thanks for being with us on the Exploring More podcast, exploring the Rendezvous Project, which we are looking forward to going through ourselves, our team. These are ingredients that we believe make for something good, and so we wanted to offer those to our friends and allies. So, yeah, thanks everybody for joining us for this exploration, and we'll see you next time on the Exploring More podcast.
Bye.